The 63rd Expeditionary Fleet, under the command of Warmaster Horus Lupercal rendezvous with elements of the Word-Bearers Legion under 1st Chaplain Erebus on the planet Davin, which their legions jointly brought into compliance 6 decades ago. They are joined by Petronella Vivar, scion of a Terran noble house who becomes Horus's documentarist. A war council is convened on Davin's surface where Erebus reveals his reason for summoning the Warmaster to the planet. Its planetary governor, Yugen Temba, has turned against the Imperium and betrayed Horus after taking his forces to the planet's moon to put down a rebellion by the Davinite tribes there. Enraged, Horus orders an immediate attack on the moon. Remembrancer Ignis Carcassi reports back on the meeting to his sponsor, Captain Garvio Loken, revealing that Erebus manipulated Horus into becoming enraged at Temba and must have an ulterior motive for wanting Horus to go to the moon. First, Captain Ezekiel Abaddon interrupts the pair, angrily rebuking Carcassi for impugning Erebus's reputation and scorning Loken for keeping company with remembrancers. When Carcassi questions Abaddon about a silver coin he handed to Erebus at the start of the meeting, Abaddon tries to kill him, but Loken holds him off long enough for Carcassi to escape. Later, Loken finds Carcassi and swears him to silence. The Sons of Horus, 1st, 2nd, 5th, 10th, 13th, and 19th companies form the spear tip that will land on Davin's moon accompanied by the Byzant Janizars, 3 titans of the Legio Mortis and Erebus's word-bearers. During the approach, they are unable to detect any of Temba's ships but pick up a ship's broadcast extolling the power of Nergleth, reminding Loken uncomfortably of the Whisperheads incident. Upon landing, the spear tips step out into a stinking, rotted swamp where a dry forest should be, and Loken declares to Tarek Torgadon that something is very wrong. Advancing through the swamp, the Sons of Horus find the corpses of Temba's men which suddenly animate and attack them. The Legio Mortis Titan dies. Ire is blinded by the thick fog and sensing an incoming aerial object, shoots it out of the sky. The object, Petronella Vivar's skiff that she took to the surface against Horus's orders, crashes in the swamp. Vivar's bodyguard Maggard holds off attacking plague zombies as long as he can, but the pair are only saved when the skiff's burning wreckage acts as a beacon for the Sons of Horus, who marshal around it and slaughter the undead. Moving forward, they discover the wreck of Yugen Temba's crashed flagship, the Glory of Terra, suffering from extreme rot and apparently the source of the unnerving broadcast. Despite Loken's objections, Horus decides to enter with 1st, 5th, 13th, and 19th companies, leaving Loken and Torgadon's companies to defend the entrance. Once inside, the Sons of Horus are scattered by a shift in the ship's position and Horus is separated from his men. Advancing alone, he encounters a horde of plague zombies whilst a simultaneous attack begins outside the ship. Fighting his way to bridge Horus, finds the bloated monstrosity that was once Yugen Temba, armed with the anatheme and sitting over the corpse of Verulam Moy. Engaging Temba in a fight, Horus is wounded in the shoulder before mortally wounding the traitor governor who repents as he dies, confessing that he gave in to the promises of chaos. Horus destroys the machinery powering the broadcast, causing the army of plague zombies to revert to inert corpses just in time to save Loken and Torgadon's companies from being overrun. The Sons of Horus find Horus on the bridge, mourning the loss of Temba and bleeding freely from his shoulder wound. They carry him outside, where he suddenly collapses to the ground. Grief-stricken and terrified that their commander might die, the Mournival rush the Primarch back to the fleet, where the news has reached the civilian population, who crowd the hangar bay to express their fear and distress. Impeded by the crowds, the desperate Mournival lash out and kill or badly injure the civilians in their path. Ignas, Carcassi, and Mercedes Oliton look on in horror from an observation bay, seeing Euphrates Keeler and a group of others hand out Lectitio Divinitatus pamphlets to the wounded in the wake of the Astartes. Horus is handed over to the Legion apothecaries, who are able to keep him alive but cannot fight the toxins preventing his blood from clotting. Dying, Horus gives Petronella Vivar his valediction, admitting many secrets about the Primarch Brotherhood. Desperate for something constructive to do, Loken and Torgadon return to the glory of Terra to search the bridge for the weapon that wounded Horus, and they are joined by Tybalt Mar, who wishes to see where Captain Moy died. In their absence, the sons of Horus's warrior lodge convene, and Erebus convinces them to entrust Horus to the Temple of the Serpent Lodge on Davin, where he says the lodge's occult magic may be able to heal him. Back on Davin's moon, Loken and Torgadon discover the anathemy, which Loken recognizes as the weapon stolen from the Hall of Devices on Zenobia, leading him to conclude that Erebus was behind Horus's wounding. They return to the fleet but find all its landing ships headed for Davin, where they arrive at the Temple of the Serpent Lodge to find that the Warrior Lodge has interred Horus inside behind doors that only open from within. The Mournival splits down the middle as Loken and Torgadon fall out with Abaddon and Aximand over this course of action, and Loken darkly predicts that they will all come to regret it. Inside the Temple of the Serpent Lodge, Erebus observes the ritual that will send his mind into the spirit world to converse with Horus. In order to complete the ritual, Lodge Priestess Akshub treacherously slits Erebus's throat. Awakening in a verdant meadow, Horus accepts his own death and goes exploring, but is disturbed by glimpses of a hellish industrial wasteland beneath the surface of the landscape. He finds Erebus disguised as Hastur Sejanus, floating face down in a stream, and Sejanus encourages him to flee a pack of wolves with the Imperial Aquila on their fur. Sejanus tells Horus that he has come as an emissary from great powers within the warp, whom he describes as benign and with no interest in the material universe, but under attack by the Emperor, who desires their power for himself. He shows Horus a shrine world from the Imperium in the 40th millennium, where the Emperor and the 9 Primarchs, who will remain loyal in the war to come, are worshipped as gods, but Horus is not, deceiving him with the lie that the Emperor abandoned the Great Crusade in order to obtain godhood, and will leave his sons behind upon his apotheosis. He then takes Horus to the secret laboratories beneath Terra, where the Emperor housed the Primarch Project, revealing that he used knowledge taken from the warp gods to create Horus and his brothers, and has orchestrated a vast lie in propagating his secular creed. The moment of the Primarch's scattering occurs, and Horus's apparition is attacked by custodian guards, but he kills most of them before allowing himself to be sucked into the raging chaos vortex. As days pass in the material universe, nearly the entire 63rd expedition camps outside the Temple of the Serpent Lodge. Loken visits Kirill Sinderman, who has hidden himself away in the Vengeful Spirit's archives, and is horrified to learn of the connection between serpent cults and chaos. Ignace Carcassy, inspired by the Astartes' brutality on the embarkation deck, writes damning poetry about it and begins distributing it throughout the ship. Euphrati Keeler is attacked on Davin by a group of soldiers angry at her commitment to the Lectitio Divinitatus, but is rescued by Torgadon, who brings her to see Sinderman, who now doubts the secular creed and wants to know about the Emperor as a god. They begin translating text from the Book of Logar and accidentally summon a demon. Chief Astropath Ingmei Singh comes to their aid, but they are only saved when, in a miracle, Euphrati channels the Emperor's power and banishes the demon before collapsing into a coma. In the warp, Horus is met by his brother Magnus, the leader of the Wolf Pack, who strips Erebus of his glamour and warns Horus that he is being manipulated into turning on his father and the Imperium. Aware that the visions he has seen are meaningless without context, but mistrustful of Magnus, who is obviously flouting the Edict of Nicaea, Horus asserts his own will and, full of pride, betrayal, and lust for power, decides he will rebel against the Emperor. Healed of his wound, he emerges from the Temple of the Serpent Lodge to thunderous cheers. As the 63rd expedition moves on, Horus and the Lodge begin working towards their new goals. The expedition encounters the Oretian technocracy, an advanced human civilization with many similarities to the Imperium, but Horus slaughters their ambassadorial party on the pretext of an assassination attempt and declares war on their society in order to seize their highly valuable STCs, which he promises to Adept Regulus in exchange for the Mechanicum's support. The Lodge summon Torgaden to a meeting and lay out a plan to hand over Loken for execution to appease Hector Varvarus, who has been lobbying for justice for the victims of the embarkation deck incident, which will also allow them to silence Ignis Carcassi and his poems. Torgaden refuses to go along and quits the Lodge, declaring his opposition to them. The Sons of Horus are joined by Angron and the World Eaters for the war on the Oretian technocracy, which drags on for a brutal and violent 9 months. A delegation from the Emperor's children pays the expedition a brief visit during which Fabius Bile appropriates the anatheme and hands it over to Fulgrim. 2nd and 10th companies follow the World Eaters through the breach for the final assault on the Oretian fortress, but an explosive trap is detonated that buries Angron beneath tons of rubble. Loken and Torgaden charge into the courtyard, barely holding back from a slaughter, and the last of the Oretian defenders muster to surrender to Hector Varvarus. At that moment Angron bursts from beneath the rubble and attacks, forcing the Sons of Horus to massacre the last of the Oretians, and Varvarus is killed in the firefight. After speaking at Varvarus's funeral, Horus enacts the first of many betrayals by cleaning house. Magard, in awe of Horus and inducted into the Lodge, murders Ignis Carcassi in his room. His death is passed off as a suicide, further distressing Kirill Sinderman and Mercedes Olaton, who hold vigil at Euphrati Keeler's bedside. Horus murders Petronella Vivar himself because he told her too much on his deathbed. Loken and Torgaden decide together that they will fight the spreading evil in their legion until the end. Convening his various supporters in a secret meeting, Horus declares his intention to overthrow the Emperor and begins planning an operation in the Istvan system.